Welcome to the Deconstructing Data podcast and live stream. I'm Jessie Lezak, fractional CMO at BDEX, along with BDEX's founder and CEO, David Finkelstein. What's new, David?
Hey, Jesse. I feel lost. I feel like we're on the wrong side. Aren't we
Are
usually on
we?
the opposite side? Yeah, there we
I don't know.
go.
Yeah, you're right. It's because I logged out and then logged back in, so you became like the first person who logged in.
Yeah, that's funny.
I didn't
Um,
even
all good here, Jesse. Looking forward to today's podcast. We got a great guest, so I'm gonna let you go ahead and bring him in.
We really do. Yeah. It's a pleasure. Let's do it. Let's go ahead and bring in Jeremy Ryan Slate. He is the CEO of Command Your Brand. Welcome in, Jeremy.
Hey, thanks for having me. You guys might have the best intro music of any show I've ever been on. I was just like ready to fist pump and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. We always see like our guests in the background in the green room kind of going like this and
That
shaking
was
their head.
I don't know if you guys noticed that was happening.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, this is good.
Yeah.
It gets you
Everybody
pretty
does it.
pumped about data, right?
Yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh, data.
All right. Well, Jeremy, we're really glad you joined us today, and we'd love to have you kind of kick it off for us. So why don't you, for our listeners who don't know who you are yet, they soon will. So why don't you give them an introduction, tell them a little bit about yourself, and what led you to build Command Your Brand, what you guys are doing for your customers today.
Yeah, so I am here in New Jersey. I've been here my entire life. I'm in the part of the state that is all farms and kind of like Appalachia mixed with farm country, and have 24 chickens, a pig, 3 kids, and my wife and I have been together for almost 15 years now. And funny enough, this is not something I ever expected to be doing. My master's degree is in the Roman Empire. So I wasn't popular until about 9 months ago, and now I'm really popular on the internet talking about the Roman Empire. But I started Command Your Brand back in 2016. Actually, in 2015, I had started a podcast that got really popular out of the gate. And I got people that started asking us for help, and we started Command Your Brand in 2016 to help people become really great guests on the right podcasts, which is expanded to podcast production and a few other services as well. And we've helped place our clients, and I think like over 7,000 shows in that period of time. And we're just really got our foothold in this new media landscape as legacy media is kind of going away, and it's becoming this new media world.
That's an awesome intro. I don't know how you segued from chickens to the Roman Empire, but it was great.
So I don't know. Are you guys familiar with like the asking men about the Roman Empire trend on TikTok that started like middle of last year?
No.
Okay, so I'm not on TikTok, but my wife is, and she's like, "Honey, you're like suddenly relevant now. You should start doing interviews about the Roman Empire." And like I've been getting on like really big podcasts talking about the Roman Empire because like if some people suddenly care.
So interesting. Well, I am on TikTok, but I must not be in that circle of the algorithm.
Apparently, it was women asking their wives and boyfriends, "How often do you think about the Roman Empire?" And they were like, "All the time." Like it was just kind of this like trend.
Oh, weird. Well, I don't know how to transition away from the Roman Empire, so let's just get into topic 1. Fueling podcast growth on YouTube. We were just talking about this a little bit pre-show. The exact strategies to expand. So what could you teach us about this, Jeremy?
Well, I think where we are in 2024, the number one thing you need to be focusing on as a podcaster is being on YouTube. And it comes from the perspective of, YouTube is a Google property, and it's the number 2 search engine in the world after another Google property, which is Google itself. And it's the ability to get found is so much better than any other way out there. I've had an audio podcast since, as I mentioned, 2015. And there's no real algorithm in audio. It's just purely search based. So it's really, really hard to get found on anywhere that is just audio based. And that's why audio shows are very hard to grow. I've seen a massive explosion of growth for myself in the last 2 years, especially. And we've seen it for a lot of our clients and a lot of other people out there for focusing on video. Now, when you're looking at focusing on video, there's a few things that matter the most. You can't just throw a video up there and hope. Number one, you have to realize the most important thing about any video is really that first 15 to 30 seconds, because that's where somebody either decides to watch your video and continue watching your video. So if you can kind of hook them in the beginning, it's important. But when you're looking at positioning it, there's a few great tools. I know you guys want to talk a little bit more about tools later, but there's a few great tools to be able to do this. One's called vidIQ. and you're taking a look at your title, your description, and your tags, and you're also looking at a really, really good thumbnail. Your title is going to help you get what's called impressions. That means actually showing up in people's feeds and actually showing up in people's search results. If you don't have a great title, that's going to be the thing you need to go back and retake a look at to be able to get impressions. The next thing you're taking a look at is your actual thumbnail. And we've experimented with so many different ways on thumbnails to actually have things do well. We found that 2 faces on a thumbnail is kind of the optimum number. More than 3 and you don't really do well, less than 2 and you don't really do well. So we take a look at having 2 faces, and also the size of the faces matters as well too. If the people are too small in thumbnails, it's not as impactful as well. A good thumbnail is what creates CTR, or click-through rate. So the 2 things that you're really looking at for getting people to watch your videos are how many impressions am I generating? And from those impressions, what is my click-through rate? What is the percentage of people that are seeing my thumbnail and then clicking through to actually watch my video? Now, that's just getting people to watch your content. Once you're at that point, you want to take a look at another stat, which is called AVD, your average view duration. How long are people watching your video? And this is very different than a lot of other platforms, because on YouTube, I think they've changed it within the last couple of years, but it used to be 3 seconds counts as a view. I think it's 5 seconds now where they've changed that. But a good view duration is going to show you how long are people watching my content, how engaged are they in that content, and based on that, you know if you're doing well. So, like, for example, I have a couple different channels. I have one that is just Roman Empire based, and our view duration is a lot longer there because people are coming out looking for a very particular topic, like who are the 5 good emperors or something like that. So our average view duration is closer to like 9 minutes on a video. Whereas if you're looking at my regular channel where I talk about politics and culture and things like that, you're anywhere from 3 to 7 minutes on an average view duration. But if your average view durations are low and your content is 20, 30 minutes, then you want to take a look at what is keeping people not engaged in my content. And sometimes that can be adding B-roll and things to your content, could be adding captions to your content, whatever it is that's going to keep the user engaged enough and interested enough so they keep watching your video. But really, if you're not focusing on YouTube in 2024, you are totally cutting off your ability to grow.
That's a great point.
I'm literally taking notes as you're talking.
Well, we can get so much more granular on this too, David, if you want to. I just didn't want to kind of throw the fire hose out there right away.
No,
Yeah.
I think it's great. I think, what I like about it is it applies to what we're doing here right here as well, right? And because we're always trying to find ways to improve what we're doing with our podcast, obviously. But I think there's a lot of listeners that will get a lot of value out of this as well. I have a question for you that's kind of somewhat related. So we're talking about, especially when we're talking about YouTube, what's your thought on the YouTube Shorts?
So my thoughts on this have changed because I know there are a lot of influencers out there saying like, hey, putting out shorts is hurting my view duration and my views on my long form content. And we did see that, that our long form content wasn't getting as many views. And if you're like me and your channel's monetized, that matters to you because the more longer view duration you have, the better CTR you have, the better RPM you have, the more money you're going to make. And like, that's important. But here's what I found. We weren't posting enough of them. So we're now posting 3 to 5 shorts a day because it's a different algorithm. And when you post those shorts, the important thing about it too, there's a little checkbox about 3/4 of the way down when you're about to publish that short that says publish this to feed subscribers. We actually uncheck that box because what we found is we don't want to tell our long form subscribers there's a short out there because number one, they might get annoyed that they're getting too many notifications and unsubscribe. And number two, shorts and long form content are really 2 different algorithms. So what makes a short do well and what makes something long form do well are different. So what I've found is we're now publishing, I think on most days we're publishing 5 shorts. We're just not publishing them like to our subscribers feed. And that's been our main growth thing. Like I think we published one yesterday, got 10,000 views. And I know that's not huge, but those 10,000 views got us 21 subscribers that are really engaged in our content. So what we found is they convert really well for bringing new subscribers in, which later on will help get us more impressions in those long form videos and hopefully increase the views.
Good stuff. Couldn't agree more. Shorts are kind of like TikTok. It's the same thing on TikTok. You want to do 3 to 5 videos a day if you want to even compete.
Well, we found two of that too. There's a few different things to take a look at with that as well. So we use a tool called video.ai, vidyo.ai. And what you can do is you can put in a link to any YouTube video or upload a video and it'll actually create the shorts for you. But
Mhm.
that's kind of like step one, because what we found is like those videos will get some views and that's great. But we
Mhm.
found the most important thing is adding sound effects and B-roll, because you have to think that your shorts viewer wants to get told a story in 30 to 60 seconds. And if
Thank
they're
you.
just sitting there and watching you talk, it's not as engaging, it's not as interesting, and there's not enough happening, because a
Mm.
shorts viewer has a shorter attention span. So you have to really kind of feed them in 30 to 60 seconds to keep them interested in what you're doing.
Yes, absolutely. And so we're getting a question from the comments. So Eric Rome, first of all, says a lot of good stuff. And he's saying, what is a short? A 3-minute video? You want to take that one?
So
Jeremy?
a short, it's the same thing as like a reel on Instagram, or do they call them that on TikTok? I don't know. As I said, I have a TikTok
No.
account, but people upload it for me.
Mhm.
Um, it's under 60 seconds. So if you're like at 60 seconds and one additional second, you're 61, it's going to force it to be a video. So you have to be under 60 seconds to be continued as short. It's literally the same exact thing as a reel.
Mhm. Yes, and a lot of people just repurpose a lot of that same content. Like you can take one mobile-sized video and put it on all the platforms, and then you'll see them kind of interchanging in between them. What's your thought on all that, Jeremy?
I think it's fine as long as it works for the platform. So like what I mean is like you don't want to take a lengthwise video and stick it on Instagram as a reel, right? Because it's not really meant for the platform. It's more of an upright type video. So if you're using a short as a reel, I think that's fine and it's interchangeable. One of our most recent short reels that did really well, and in my head, I'm trying to make sure I interchange back and forth between the right terminology. Um, One of our reels on Instagram that recently did well, I think it got like 35,000 views, about the five good emperors. We took that one and actually moved it over to YouTube, and I think that one got another 15 to 20,000 views on YouTube. So what I found is typically one that does well in one place will also do well in another place, because as I mentioned, it's not just somebody there talking, it's also adding in things like B-roll and sound effects and things like that that keep that listener engaged, because they want to be told a story in 30 to 60 seconds.
Well, Eric says thanks.
Mhm.
But let's move on to our second topic of AI.
Can I
So
add one thing to that too,
sure.
just because I think this would be helpful for your listeners?
Yeah.
So, thumbnails, because there is like really an art and science to them, and there's definitely people out there that are better than me. But I found that there's a few things that can make any of us really, really good at it. I used Photoshop forever, and I'm like a Photoshop power user. Most people aren't. We've actually moved a lot of our stuff over to Canva in the last couple months, mainly because their AI tools are good. But the one thing that's really good is we found, believe it or not, we found the resolution of the image of someone's face. Like if you're putting a face on there, the resolution of that image matters so much for people actually clicking through it and watching it. So in Canva, they have an image upscaler, and it's better and more effective than a lot of the ones I've found out there. Any image we put in there whatsoever of someone's face, we always upscale it, and it just makes the resolution so much better. And it helps our click through rate dramatically.
I totally do the same thing. I'm glad that you mentioned it because, yeah, I mean, I thought I just found it and I was the only one doing it, but it really does improve it. And you think Canva, it's just $12 a month, but really it's a marketer's best friend.
And it goes right into where you wanted to go next, which is AI tools. So I guess we can save some of that for there.
Well, let's do it. So, using AI to cut production time by 80%. So, there's some data. Could you talk to us about that 80% number?
Yeah, so well, you have to think about, and I know there's might be audio and video editors out there that are insulted, so I apologize, guys.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of tools I felt that have cut down this stuff dramatically. For our interviews, we pre-record everything, and I use a software called Riverside FM for that. It is a great software. I think some of the features are actually similar to StreamYard, but I think StreamYard kind of added some of those later on. But one of the big ones is actually having recordings that are native, meaning each side of the recording is recorded on that person's side, then uploaded to the cloud rather than through the internet like Zoom does. So you get higher quality audio and video. So that's kind of step one. But from there, it'll actually give us a side by side video, which we can create, and then an individual video for the guest, an individual video for the host. We'll take all of those and we'll move those then into Premiere Pro, our video editing software. And there's a really great tool out there that's a plugin for Premiere Pro we've picked up, and it's called Autopod. And what you do is we take those three video files. So it's a guest and host side by side, one of the guests and one of the hosts. So it's like you're getting three shots. And you have to have them all on the same length and have them end on the same frame. So what we actually do is just stick the outro on so that they all end in the same frame. But then what Autopod does is it'll edit your entire podcast, switching between different speakers, between the side by side, in about 45 to 60 seconds. So it cuts it down dramatically. Now, what we've done in our process is sometimes you do get flubs, right? If you're recording, we have, code words that we'll then use because you can edit in Riverside by the captions. So we'll just look for the certain code words, which is producer. And if the word producer is used, we know we need to cut that section. So that speeds up any cutting quickly. The editing is done very, very quickly. And then really that's all we're doing to edit our video. Now, one thing we do is leveling. Sure, can it be done in Premiere Pro? Absolutely. But it can be a pain in the butt. And sometimes you do get background sound as well. So there is a tool that we use called Auphonic. And what we'll do is take our Premiere Pro file, spit it as an MP3 because we just want the audio initially. We'll run it through Auphonic, and that'll level all the audio, handle any background noise or any issues with it. And then we take that, bring it back into Premiere Pro, and now we have a fully leveled audio. Obviously, you have to mute all the audio lines of your previous audio. And then we've been able to take things that would have taken us hours. We've edited an entire video episode that way. So that's been a big deal. Now, there's also a great tool that we use as well, because sometimes you'll get, and I've made this mistake. I did it just 2 weeks ago, actually, where even though you do all your sound checks and everything else, maybe you move and you knock out a USB and you didn't realize you did it, and you've recorded not on your mic, you've recorded on your computer mic. There is a tool, if you subscribe to Adobe, it's called Adobe Auto Enhance. And it can take a file that wasn't recorded on a mic and make it sound almost like it was recorded on a mic. It's pretty darn good. And we've used that for times that experience has happened. So that's kind of how we've taken a lot of the production out of it. From there, we take all of those files and move them to video.ai to make our chapter length ones, which not a lot of the other softwares out there do, and also our shorts as well. So it's really cramped down in production time for us dramatically. And then if you guys wanted to get into Canva as well, because there's a lot of tools in there too.
I mean, we could talk Canva all day. I will say the Riverside one, I tested that on my own before we started deconstructing data. The reason
it's not as good for streaming. And I know you guys stream.
That was what I was going to say. That's why
Yeah.
we didn't move forward with it. It was good though, because you're right. It does all that local recording. So if
you're just recording, it's great. But like the streaming part of it, and I really hope they improve on that in the future. It's not good because you have to go through and make separate SMT the streaming connections every time, and it's just annoying.
Yeah. So so much on AI. I mean, David, you've even when the video AI stuff was like first starting to come out, David opened my eyes to all of it. Like video,
yeah, we use video as well. Yeah.
And Opus Pro. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
I like Opus, but that doesn't do the one thing it doesn't do that video does is those lengthwise ones, like the chapter size ones, because we post a lot of like 4 to 6 minute videos on YouTube too.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's like, look at our podcast. It's like a 45-minute podcast. We typically, like, especially on YouTube, we leave the live show on, so it's the whole show. We used to do shorts, and I think we were just talking about trying to get those back up. But what's your thought about breaking the show up into smaller pieces as well?
Well, you have to think about initially, like, what are people looking for when they get to a podcast, right? They're looking for some sort of educational information. So maybe there's one part of your show that is honed in on one topic, and that's what people are looking to get. That's what you have to consider is you're setting your show up for better discoverability and better search. Maybe people don't want to watch a 45 minute to an hour long thing, but they want that 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So really setting yourself up to have different pieces that people can get based on what they're looking for is vital. Like maybe there's someone that just wants AI tools and you have like, here are the top 5 AI tools you need. Or maybe there's somebody that wants to know like, how do I keep people on a landing page longer or something like that? And you have part of your episode that's just on that, whatever it is, it helps people to find just that information. Maybe they want to watch the full episode and that's great, but it helps you to get people that you typically wouldn't get because you have a very topical video because it's a piece of your larger one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like that idea. And because we typically have like 3 topics and we can talk, like this about the topics for a while. But I think to your point, like there's a lot of juicy information that comes out of that sort of first couple of minutes. of talking about that topic that could be really interesting to, to separate out.
Well, and that goes into your title for search, right? Like your title for search,
Yes.
really 70 characters is kind of like your obviously I think you can have 100 characters, but 70 characters is kind of that sweet spot of where you don't want to go past. You can't explain everything you talked about in an hour-long show in 70 characters most of the time.
Yeah.
So let's say, for example, I do an episode on decline and fall of the Roman Empire, where we talk about the kingdom of Rome, we talk about the 5 good emperors, we talk about assassinations, we talk about Julius Caesar. Well, those are all like 4 different topics. And we may have people that want to come in for each one of those topics.
Yeah.
But if they looked at my original title, which is, let's say, decline and fall of the Roman Empire, they wouldn't know those things are covered in there. So you're really helping users to find your content in a different way.
Yeah. I think one point you made earlier could really probably even double the BDX views of the short videos we were doing on like TikTok and YouTube. And that's, you mentioned earlier, having the different B-roll in between, keeping the listener interested, because no one just wants to watch a talking head anymore. Maybe a couple years ago that was interesting, but now switching to some B-roll, or even just having the person talking with a different background, like as you're recording the video. I've done that on TikTok, but for the show, it's a little more difficult. But have you seen any data? I'm curious on.
It's been dramatic.
Yeah.
And it's like 10x the difference between how our regular shorts do and how the ones with B-roll do. It's dramatic because you can just look at the stats and know that was a B-roll one versus one that wasn't. And there's a couple softwares out there we use. As I mentioned, the main optimization software we've used over the years is vidIQ. We've actually been using another one a lot more, and it's called Taja.ai, TAJA.ai. And what you can actually do is, when you have your YouTube video, you can have it as either private, unlisted, or public, right? Public is basically considered published by YouTube. But when you set it to unlisted, you can still give that link to someone or pull data from that link. So what you can do, you could take your video that's just uploaded, put the link into Taja, it'll write the title for you, the description, the tags, and it'll give you like different options for the title and score them on 0 to 100. So, and maybe the first 10 titles it gives you don't like, you can have it make more titles for you. So we have it do that. We also have it create AI thumbnails for us. Then we could take those thumbnails, move them into Canva, because I'm sure it'll get better in the future, but I found out most times in images, AI cannot spell and everything looks Russian for some reason.
Yes.
So what you do is you take that into Canva, use their text editing option to either edit the text or remove it. And also you want to make sure the text you're using is on brand for you anyway. So maybe you have a brand template of how you want to use the text. But you can also edit the images too. Maybe you want to cut out somebody's head and put in somebody else's head. But we've used that to dramatically help with our process on videos. But now it also makes shorts too. And it has this new, it's a beta process. So it's not perfect yet. I imagine it's going to get better. But it has auto B-roll, where it'll basically pull from their library and add B-roll to it for you, and then kind of ask if you like it or not.
Oh, okay. Like it just has its own stock video there for
Yes.
you. And is it smart enough to be like, oh, you're talking about basketball, so I'm going to show a dribbling basketball or something like that?
It's gotten pretty good. And it's one of those things that I imagine like it's been around, it's been out like a month. So I imagine like the longer it's been around, the better it's going to get.
So cool. Such an interesting idea. So anything else on AI in terms of cutting production time?
Trying to think, because there's so many tools I use. Like definitely using the sound filter of Crisp.ai, because just cleaning up audio is a pain in the butt. So if your audio goes in clean, it's much easier to handle. So that's a big part of it. But if you're cutting down on like the actual sitting down and cutting the video and everything else, it's big. One of the functions that Riverside has in their editing suite as well is they have one that will take out air gaps and also take out filler words. So that's another thing that can just dramatically speed things up. And then once you put it into Premiere Pro and AutoPod, I'm not kidding. It's literally 45 to 60 seconds and you have a fully edited video, which is going to create a lot of attention.
So interesting. Awesome. Those air gaps really make a difference too, because like you said, people don't have long attention spans. So even just a quick like breath, it's like you've lost them. So to have those tools where you can just take out those gaps, it's really helpful.
It's and wild too, because like I'm not sure how old you guys are, but I'm a couple years away from 40, and like we had our au pair that just went back to Hungary, and she was 20 when she left earlier in the year, and like she's used to watching like 30 to 60-second like TikTok videos. So if you try to make them watch a movie, they just physically cannot do it. And I'm hearing like my favorite movie is Oliver Stone's Alexander. That's like 4 hours and 10 minutes. So it's like, you really do have to account for people's attention spans when you're trying to catch them online.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely.
And speaking of attention spans, let's get into advertising and what strategies every size podcast can use to profit.
Well, I think number one, it's understanding like the traditional advertising strategy and what that looks for. When you're out there, most people kind of have this dream that they're going to start a podcast, they're going to have millions of listeners, they're going to be Joe Rogan, they're going to get millions in advertising dollars, and they're going to sign a Spotify deal. That's not what's going to happen to 99.99% of people. But understanding how traditional advertising works is important so that you can understand if it's right for you or wrong for you. And when you look at it in the podcasting world and in the traditional media world, they use the CPM, or the cost per mil. And so that means it's the amount of money you're getting paid per 1,000 downloads. And the going rate is kind of all over the place, but I've kind of seen the standard to be about $25 per 1,000. So let's say you have 5,000 listens to a podcast. That's 5 1,000s. So that's $125 for somebody to pay you for traditional advertising. Maybe that's right for you if you have big numbers. It's not right, in my opinion, for most people. So there's a couple different strategies you want to take a look at that are going to be a little bit better for you. Number one, I don't think the model works right for most people to just have a podcast and hope that that thing's going to become a business. Your podcast should really be the front end vehicle that creates attention for a business that you already have. It's really a PR vehicle. It creates that know, like, and trust factor where people know you better, they trust you better. And it's also an incredible networking tool to really find the right people that either you need to connect with or that you want to work with. So I think that's one part of it, is it should connect with your business already. So it should make you money there. But the other thing as well, and this is my favorite, and I actually make more money with this strategy than the CPM strategy. And that is, we find affiliate deals for products that we really like, and we promote those on the show. And there are things that I already use as well. Tim Ferriss, this is back in 2019, had done a test of having advertisers on his show versus having people do like a supported model where they would like do donations like monthly or something like that to support his show. And while he made more money with the second model initially, what happened is people stopped giving money a couple months in. And they said, "Hey, Tim, we like these ads because we saw them as recommendations from you." So finding affiliate deals for products you really like that you can recommend to people are great. Now, the commission rate really matters, right? Like maybe, you're going to work with a product that has a high cost and they have a 25 to 50% commission rate. Well, that's going to be really good for you. I find for most people, affiliate deals are really good. Also, as well, you may want to find ways that maybe there's other businesses you can work with based on the guests you're having too. So there's a lot of strategies you can do it. But I think, to me, the affiliate model, if somebody has a high enough cost product, if they don't, if they have a $25 product, it doesn't make any sense for you. But if they have a high enough cost product, you can likely make way more money recommending products you already use. Don't recommend products you don't use. Don't recommend services you don't use, because you have to remember that's your name on the line and your brand on the line. I think that's a really, really important part of what you're doing.
100%. And if you don't use it, then you likely aren't going to be speaking about it, and your audience will see right through it. But yeah, no, those are all really great points. What about sponsorships? Have you worked with sponsorships at all?
Sponsorships. So the thing you have to consider around them is, number one, you want to think of the value of your own show, which I think is important. I don't think most people place sponsorships a high enough value, meaning, don't charge $50 an episode because you're not going to make enough money. But you also need to think of like, how much of a commitment to my show does a sponsorship need to have? So typically, to have a good sponsorship deal, you want to have a minimum agreement period of time. 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever it is for you, or 10 episodes, 20 episodes, because you have to consider, like, number one, I want to make money, but number two, I want my sponsor to make money as well. And what is that time commitment that they have to have with you, where your audience hears it enough time that they take action on the sponsor message, that the sponsor is also going to do well. So I think sponsorships are good, but you want to have some sort of a package, like you buy 10 episodes, 15 episodes, or you sponsor us for a month, whatever it is, because you want to make sure that they're getting heard enough times that they're going to have end value and they're going to want to work with you again. I think that's a really important thing to have.
Yeah, I mean, we've been considering sponsorship, but the reality is the greatest value we get out of it has just been our viewership and our listeners. We've had numerous customers, convert from that, just simply saying, "Hey, you guys sound like you know what you're talking about. Can you help me with this problem?"
Mhm.
And
And
it's
that
like,
goes back to the first strategy I was talking about, David, where I
yeah,
think most people try to start this podcast as like, hey, this is going to be a thing I'm going to make money off of, which, hey, you may. I'm not going to tell you you're not going to. But for most people, that's not the case. It
yeah,
should be the trust vehicle so that people say, hey, you know what? David and Jesse know what they're talking about. I need to call these people and work with them. And that really is what it is for most people. It's a trust vehicle. So it enhances your own credibility.
yeah. I mean, so many people do. So many people write books for that, and everybody's always asked me like, "Why haven't you written a book?" But to me, this is a book that I'm basically, discussing with my audience every week. And so we've done this 113 times now. every week for 2 years now, and so I think that's been the best thing for us is just having these conversations, educating people, and really hearing people's feedback and learning with them at the same time, but also being able to you know just share with our community.
I will say
Absolutely.
though, it's a great tool if you eventually want to write a book to use that podcast for it. So I wrote my first book.
Yeah, that's true.
I wrote my first book, Unremarkable to Extraordinary, 3 years ago. And what I started with is I had kind of like, I wrote the intro, I wrote the end, and then I had kind of like some commentary I added. But the thing we actually started with is the bones of it were the transcripts of all these podcasts I had done. I've done, 1,200 different episodes. So I did transcripts of particular stories that I wanted to include in the book. And then we ran those through a software called GPT for Work. So it helped us kind of make those into more of a narrative format. And then we had a human editor run through that and make it into more of a story format. So you can also, use that podcast to eventually write that book if you set it up the right way.
That's interesting too. Yeah, and that's a great story too. I love that.
I love it too because it really just comes back around full circle that what we're doing here, these shows, these videos, it's data. We're creating data to be able to go create more repurposed, recycled marketing content. And really, like, you know, the big thing that I love about deconstructing data and is that we get to get David on camera in front of the audience because I knew when I started working at BDEX, it was like, okay, well, wow, these guys are awesome. How do I tell the rest of the world about this? And really, it's just we got to get David on camera because people connect with people, not brands. For one, he's trustworthy, and then it's just so repurposable. It just makes all the sense in the world.
100%.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I digress because we need to talk about tech stack because I feel this whole episode has been tech stack.
Wait,
So,
Jesse, before we do that, I think someone's asked about
oh,
Jeremy's book.
oh, here we go. We got a question from Elizabeth McEwen.
Oh,
What is the book about?
so it's called Unremarkable to Extraordinary, and I think that we all start life out as unremarkable, and it's the things we do and the experiences we have that make us extraordinary. So I took a look at. I've interviewed some really really cool people, Super Bowl champions, World Series champions, billionaires, and I wanted to find out like I took a look at the people that started out the most ordinary and did some extraordinary things and took apart their stories and put it in such a way that these are actually steps that you can apply to make change in your life today. So the book is called Unremarkable to Extraordinary. It's in bookstores everywhere. It's on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble. So you can find it out there anywhere.
That's really cool. That sounds
Awesome.
awesome. Yeah. So good question, Liz. And I guess we'll get back to tech stack now. So you've mentioned I couldn't even name all the tools you've mentioned on this episode so far, but what are your favorites?
Gosh, my favorites. So Crisp.ai, back to that favorite tool. Um, and then I don't know if you guys want to talk about audio and video stuff after that, we can too, because I have a lot of thoughts on like I think things that are easiest for people to use. But Crisp.ai is a great tool. I also use this software. It's only for Mac, so I don't know if there's a PC alternative out there, but it's called Webcam Settings. So right now I'm literally just on a 1080p webcam. It's a Logitech Brio 4K. And this tool actually takes. I'll show you guys what it looks like out of the box. This is what my camera looks like out of the box.
Oh, wow.
This is what webcam settings does to it. So there's a lot of different things I can edit. And I have presets too, based on like how the lighting is that day. Like maybe I want to be less zoomed in. or whatnot as well. So it's a really great tool for taking any camera and making it look even better. I know we do have to get a better DSLR in here, but we need a little bit of a bigger space to do that. A webcam can be nice in a more condensed space, and webcam settings is great for that. Trying to think of what else.
Well, are you on a Mac or a PC?
I'm on a Mac because I will tell you, there are a lot more like audio and video geared tools that are available for Mac that aren't available for PC.
Yeah. I asked because I'm on a Mac too, and that webcam thing sounds really interesting, but haven't had luck putting cameras on my Mac.
$4.99 because you know what's
What?
wild? So this is an M1 Mac, and I know they just came out with the M2 Macs recently, but until the M2 Macs, all Mac cameras were 720p, and it's like, really, guys? In 2023, I'm buying a brand new computer that has a 720p camera. So really, if you wanted good video quality, you needed a webcam no matter what. So that's the webcam settings really takes any webcam and just really makes it better. Also, as well, like for our iPhone users out there as well, continuity camera is great if you're not already using that. Continuity camera allows you to take your iPhone camera and use it as the camera on your MacBook. And there's some great tools that like help you to just clip it to your computer. Reminder to put that phone on do not disturb, or your video will shut off if somebody calls you during that recording. So, but continuity camera and webcam settings are two really great tools. In terms of like what I use for audio, this is a Shure SM7B, and this one's like 4 years old too, and it still sounds great. So it's a really predictable mic that you may be able to get. This type of mic uses an XLR hookup, one of these guys, which doesn't plug directly into your computer. It needs an interface in order to do that. I use a Focusrite 2i2, and it's literally like this big. So it travels really well. It can hold up to 2 mics, and it's one that if I'm traveling on a backpack, it'll fit right in there. Now, this mic out of the box doesn't have enough decibels where you have to really crank it up and it'll pick up a lot of background noise. So I run it through something called a cloud lifter. It adds some more decibels to it, and I don't have to have the gain pumped up as high. And then in terms of lighting, I do one light to the front, another light to the front, and I also use a hair lamp as well, because otherwise you don't get separation between yourself and the wall. So it creates an additional separation between you and the wall behind you. So those are kind of like the audio and video tools I like to use. I kind of sprinkled in a lot of the other like tools that I use other than that. But there's a lot of stuff I use. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, definitely. Those are some cool tools. I don't think anyone has ever talked to us about hardware before. Have they, David?
No, that's good. Yeah, no, and this is a unique, definitely a unique podcast for us because it's a podcast about podcasts. So I love it.
Well, I think people have the idea that like it has to be like this expensive thing, and like, okay, so you don't need this mic. You could go with something like a Audio Technica, what is it, like the 2100X or something like that, like, which is a cheaper mic. This is a $400 mic, but you can get a great amount of gear to create a great show for like under $200. And also simple too, because I think you can really overcomplicate it. Like I know the Podcaster Pro that Rode has, it's a great piece of equipment, but for most people, it's more than you're ever going to need, and it's a lot of work to work on. So you need simplicity that's predictable as well. Like I can leave this stuff set up and just plug in, and I don't really have to change anything. Whereas if you use something like a Podcaster Pro or something, you may have to do that.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. Well, and just so you know, Jeremy, Elizabeth put the link to your book in the comments. So if anyone was curious, they can head over to LinkedIn and find that link over there.
I appreciate that. We had some cool stories in there. I had my favorite baseball player, who's Nick Swisher. He's played for the Yankees. We've had who else is it? We've had My Pillow guy, which is in there, which has got a very interesting story. Like the guy was literally like sweeping crack off the carpet to try and like, because he was so into drugs before he started his business. So there's some really great stories in there if you're somebody that's looking to do something else with your life.
Wow. Yeah. Interesting. Well, thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing all of these great tips. I mean, you shared all of the tools. There was so much to take from this episode. But in closing, Jeremy, would you like to tell listeners how they can find you after the episode?
Yeah, well, so for me, it's really important that, as the economy changes, as businesses change, I want to see people's businesses do well. I don't want to see their empire decline and fall like the Roman Empire did. So I put
Mhm.
together a really great resource for them called Command Your Empire. And it goes over a lot of the basic PR and podcasting things that you need to know to get your impact out there. So if you go to commandyourempire.com, you can pick that up absolutely free. And it is literally one of the best things you can do to get started online to create more attention for your business.
Oh, that's awesome. And
Awesome.
Liz had one more comment. She says, "Holy cow, I've met Nick Swisher. How random."
He is the nicest human being ever. I had 60 minutes booked out with Nick, and we got to the end. He's like, bro, I'm having fun, bro, because that's how he talks. He's like, can we go another half hour? So I went 90 minutes with Nick Swisher. He is one of the nicest human beings you've ever met.
That's awesome. That's
That
good
is
to
awesome.
hear.
Well, thank you for sharing. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. This is really, I don't get to really get into like kind of the nitty gritty of it like we did today. So I had a lot of fun.
Cool. Yeah, this has been great. I appreciate it. We appreciate it as podcasters, but I hope that a lot of our listeners will get a lot of value out of it as well. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And real quick before we go, I'm going to pull a QR code that was generated in Canva up on the screen. And if you scan that, it's going to take you on over to beatx.com. But of course, if you are on podcast and you're not listening on video, just head over to beatx.com because we invite you to get powered by BeatX. And what I mean by that is build an authentic connection with your audience. So, how do we do that? So, AI. Imagine taking the power of AI to craft your audiences. That's your audience data. So, as a marketer, many of us know that understanding your audience can sometimes be the hardest part of marketing. So, you get to take your best first party customer data and AI to go find more people just like them. Let's bring you closer to your marketing goals. So, like I said, beatx.com, click talk to an expert, and we're going to be eager to guide you. And also, for those listening who might be curious about deconstructing data, we talked about this a little bit on the show already, but we're starting to toy with the idea of data sponsorship opportunities. So we're just an email away, but we've aggregated some of our audience data and we'd love to share that with you if you would be interested in talking with us about that. And also, we are always interested in hearing about who you want to hear from on deconstructing data. Some of the best guests we get are actually suggested by you in the audience. So, who are the data experts in your life? Send us an email with that name over to info@beatx.com and share your qualitative data with us so we can make this better for you. And thank you so much, Jeremy, for joining.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
All
All right.
right.
Take care. Thanks again.